to the very first episode of This Shit Can't Be It. I'm your host, Ann Oikel, and I am going to give you a little bit of a deep dive during this very first episode to help you have a very good understanding and grasp of what this podcast is meant for, what you can potentially expect from it, and how your engagement can help us learn and grow and evolve with you as well. So let's dive right in. I want to cover the 4 levels of consciousness because you're going to find that you fit into one of these levels, if not multiple levels, at any given time. The key is, where is your home? Where do you live most of the time when it comes to these levels of consciousness? Now, I pulled this from Vision Lakiani's description because he puts it so eloquently and so direct and to the point. And I'll just explain and dive in a little bit deeper so that you can understand each level. And like I say, we're not under one, but there is one, typically, maybe 2, where we live the bulk of our day, our waking hours. So the first level of consciousness, he calls the culture scape. What is the culture scape? The culture scape is where we are living day to day, and we're living in that 70 to 80% autopilot. So it's just happening for us, and we're doing the same routines, the same things without thinking that we did yesterday, and the day before that, and the day before that, and the day before that. I refer to this as the hamster wheel because it's the same cycle over and over and over again. We're just running in circles. And I caught myself in this hamster wheel. And that's when I started saying, this shit can't be it. And what the fuck? These were my 2 go-to sayings. I actually recorded how many times I said, what the fuck, when I was working my corporate job, because it was high stress, high demand. And it was brutal on my physical, mental, and emotional body, not to mention my spiritual body as well. And I would say, what the fuck, in a negative connotation more than 50 times a day. That was a huge slap in my face. So this podcast is really built from where I've been. It's for the busy parents that are exhausted, feeling that cap strapped and looking to evolve, looking to move out of the culture scape, which takes me to phase number 2, which is the awakening stage. The awakening phase is where you are still in that hamster wheel, but you might be questioning the culture scape. You might be questioning what you see in the news. You might be questioning how things are in life. You might be looking for some solutions here and there, but you're questioning. You're starting that evolution and you're learning and maybe even applying and getting some small results, but you may not fully understand when you get those results what was really happening on the back end, but you'll take it. You'll take it and enjoy it, but you're still in that hamster wheel. You're awakening, you're questioning life, which he refers to as the matrix of life. And just to give another example is, we are born into a matrix, so to speak. We're born into a way of living, the way our parents were raised, the way they were raised, and vice versa. So it's almost like an ancestral path, so to speak, that we are growing up in. So for me, for example, I grew up in a household where parents worked. We didn't have business owners around us. We didn't live in an area where we would have that different dynamic, that different outlook, different perspective to learn different belief systems and different habits. So I was born and raised to go get good education, get a good job, and life will be great. My parents both quit school at grade 8. And, they wanted us to finish school and get a good education, get a decent job so we could make more money than they did. Well, guess what? I did it. Still felt the same hamster wheel that they did. So it was just at a higher pay scale. That was the only difference, because I still had their belief systems embedded. I still had their habits embedded. So until I started questioning enough and started shifting and changing myself, did my life shift and change. And that takes me to phase 3 of the consciousness phases, which is the recoding. So the recoding, what does that mean? That's when we are diving deeper and understanding more internally. We're not so focused on the outside. So in the culture scape, you're 100% focused on what's going on outside you. It's impacting you. You're reacting and you feel like you have no control over anything. That's just the hands you were dealt. In the awakening stage, you still have a little bit of that, but you're questioning. You're starting to educate yourself. You're starting to evolve a little bit. You're starting to understand that status quo doesn't have to always be it, that there are other paths, so to speak. So in the recoding stage, you're realizing you have a tree, you have multiple branches, you have multiple options, and you're not so in control by what's going on outside of you. You start to find that inner peace, you start to find that inner power. Now, I want to just pause for a moment because I built this podcast so I can help you understand where you're at through story, through relatability, through my people that I'm bringing in and I'm going to be interviewing and talking with, so that you have that connection, that understanding of what you're going through, they went through. Maybe it's stuff that I've been through, but I haven't been through everything, so I can't relate to everybody. That's why I'm bringing people in to talk to them, because we all have different experiences. And I want you to be able to tap into those all different facets of life, all different facets of backgrounds, so that you can have that connection. Because I don't have all the answers and I'm not for everybody. So I want to make sure that I can help hit all the different personalities, all the different situations, and what's happening. And in doing this, I also created a program called Ignite Your Personal Power. And this program is designed, again, for the busy, exhausted parents looking to find that outcome of their joy, their peace, their calm, their tranquility, where they have a natural drive, a natural energy that just bursting out of them every single day, because they now live with purpose and passion versus just having the exterior culturescape dictate what that might be for them, whether they like it or not. So in the recoding, this is where you dive in to more interpersonal. So my program takes you from phase 2, where you're recognizing and you want the change, because phase 1, you don't want change. You just are living the cycle and don't think there's a way out and don't believe there's a way out. Therefore, your habits don't give you a way out. And the awakening stage, you have small ways out. You're recognizing there's ways and you know there's change. I'm giving you an opportunity through my program to be able to tap into that change and, fast forward a little bit versus doing what I did in the slow way, the slow pace. So this helps you go from the awakened stage to the recoding stage into the fourth stage as well. So that is available. The link to join is below, but let's carry on with what the recoding is. So you're diving deeper internally, you're actually finding your personal power, and you're having less impact from what's going on outside you. You understand the outside world is going to happen regardless. Life cycles and the natural laws of the universe, you start to understand them at this stage a bit deeper. You start to understand them at a much higher level, and you start to accept them and you start to live by them. Now, what do I mean by the natural laws of the universe? These are not laws that we have to live by because somebody dictated that we can't drive on the opposite side of the road, or we have to stay between the lines, or we have to stay into this box, or when we get to work, this is our job, we don't step outside of it. Not those kind of laws, the universal laws. So things like polarity, there's an equal and opposite reaction and action to everything we do. There's a positive, there's a negative. There's a black, there's a white. There's a oil, there's water. There's sun, there's rain. So the polarities is the natural laws of the universe. You start to dive into those, like the 7 Hermetic Principles talks about these 7 laws that are just, it is what it is. It's not a law by law abiding citizens. It's a natural law of the universe, of how the universe flows and functions. And at the recoding stage, you really start to embody this and understand it, and you start to live by it a little bit more. Therefore, you're in flow. I don't know if you've ever heard that terminology, but you become in flow. And that takes us to phase 4. So phase 4 is the becoming extraordinary, extraordinary. So what does this phase mean? Because I can tell you, if you're living in the culturescape, you're not going to grasp phase 4 very well. Some people do. Some people will float between all 4 phases. So they could be very much living in the culturescape, but they have such a loving, caring heart that they will dabble in the other phases, including phase 4. So phase 4 is the transcendent limitations, where we go deeper, even deeper into thyself, deeper into the natural laws of the universe, and we are connected. We feel at one. We feel the oneness with the universe and or our God, our spirit, whatever your religion is. You are more tapped into it, you're more dialed into it, and you're operating from a place of purpose and impact and passion and drive. You're here, you're a change maker versus a influenced by the exterior forces. So you're really deeply connected. You're embodied. Now, these are words that I struggled with when I was living in phase 1 and 2, because I was like, embodiment. I know what the word is, but what does it truly, really, really feel like? And when you're in those phases, it's like tough to tap into that. It really is. And it's not until you start learning and evolving. And once you experience it, you're like, that's it. It's something that's very hard to put into words and have you experience it from a video, because it's not going to happen. You have to live, you have to transform, you have to learn and grow and evolve to be able to impact and really feel what that is like. And I got to tell you, I do my best now to live in stage 3 and dive into stage 4 as much as I can. This podcast came about because I want to be in stage 4. I want to give back. I want to contribute. And this is one way that I can do it. I can do it here and bring you people that you can relate and connect with. So this podcast is out of my drive to evolve to be living in that stage 4 more often, more frequent. Now, like I say, you could be living in any of these phases. I lived in phase 1 and 2 a lot, back and forth throughout the bulk of my adult life, to be honest. And then I started to say, this shit can't be it. And then I finally said, there's got to be a better way. And when I said there's got to be a better way, that's when the evolution started to happen. That's when my learning, my thirst for learning, and actually implementing and taking those action steps to implement and dive into what I was actually learning, to be able to, take those massive action steps and really slow down my nervous system. Because in phase 1 and 2, I was like, boop, 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 always functioning up here, almost like a computer system that's do, 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 do. That was me. And it wasn't until I started to calm my nervous system, started to slow everything down, that I was able to respond versus react. So you might think they're one and the same, but reaction is when something happens and boom, you have an autopilot response. That's the reaction. You're reacting on autopilot because of your programming and your perceptions of what just happened. Where response is a little bit more systematic and thought out. A response is when you actually take a breather and you assess what's happening and you respond differently versus reacting, which is more spontaneous. That's the difference. So, in being able to respond versus react, I now no longer have as much chaos. I no longer have the exhaustion and the feeling of that tapped, capped, and strapped with every piece of resource that I have within me. All of that subsides as you start to elevate yourself into the higher levels of consciousness. It naturally subsides because that's not our natural way of being. That's not how we're meant to be. So I'll give you another example only because I've lived it. When I was living in that functionality of the culturescape and just the awakening phase, and when I say the awakening phase, I'm going to say the lower level of the awakening phase. I was very reactive. I have a very explosive personality. And when something didn't go my way, I would explode. I was extremely confrontational, very verbal. I was never physical. Some people get physical and, got a bash in order to get it out. But I was more verbal. So I was verbally confrontational, verbally attacking. And when something happened, I was ready and I was off. I was going. The difference being is if somebody is in the higher levels of phase 3, which is the recoding, and or phase 4, which is becoming extraordinary, you understand that that reaction is not personal. You understand that that person who's reacting is doing it because they don't know what you know. They haven't experienced what you've experienced. And that's their way to protect themselves. That's their way to be seen, to be heard. In my program, I cover the 6 human needs, and that's their way to get access to them in a negative way. And you understand when you're in the higher levels that, whew, this is not personal. You give them space. You breathing through it in phase level 3 and 4, you're actually breathing for them and diffusing the situation. Because when you remain calm, they get to a point where there's nothing left to react for. So they're either just going to turn around and walk away and be done, or they're going to calm down with you where they can now get to your level of calmness and have a conversation versus the reaction and explosion and attacking verbally or physically. You can now have that conversation and carry on differently. I have literally watched this diffusion happen like that. I have literally watched it happen. And, it doesn't happen often, but when you're around people that are in the phase 3 and 4, it happens quite often in their world. Where in the phase 1 and 2, which is the culturescape in the awakening phase, that doesn't happen very often because you're reacting and you're typically dealing with other people that are in the same position you are and they're reacting, and then you have an explosion where someone's reacting and someone's not. It's a very different experience, and this one comes back down. Because as long as you don't heighten, why would you? You have no reason to. It's outside of you and it's happening and you can't control it. And you're like, whatever, not my jam, not my problem, but I'll sit and give them space, or I'll just walk away and not it's not my problem. So that's the difference. And I wanted to bring these up because you're going to see these different levels of consciousness within yourself, within the people that I'm interviewing, within me. You're going to see people grow and evolve from the challenges and trials of life that they had. And you're going to see how they got past it, how they moved beyond it. A lot of them are going to have offers that they can give you, whether it be free offers, paid offers, things that you can jump into, learn, grow, and evolve. Every episode is going to have that person that I'm interviewing, my guest, is going to have their contact information and their links in the description below that video. So if you don't want to work with me and you see somebody you want to work with, you have that ability, you have that capability, that functionality. And if you want to work with me, my information will be there as well. But know that I want to give you options. I want to give you variety. I want to give you a place where you can feel safe to evolutionize yourself on your terms. Because after all, that's what it's all about. I had to learn the hard way that it's not about me controlling everyone else. It's about me being my own leader. And by being that leader, people will naturally start to come and follow because they want that. They want that unspoken energy that you radiate when you get to those levels of 3 and 4 in the consciousness, the recoding and the becoming extraordinary. And that's a natural vibe, a natural energy that people gravitate to. Another example is people who are dealing with domestic violence. I've never been through domestic violence. My mother was, so I have a very different perspective of domestic violence, but I've never been in it. So I'm not going to relate to that heaviness, that granite rock that you feel on your body, your chest, your lungs, your heart, your head, when you're stuck and feeling trapped in that situation where you're boxed in with no doors, no windows. And it's when you get to the awakening stage, you see, a window, a hatch, a door that might be opening just slightly. And then when you get to the phase 3 and 4, you can escape that. But I've never been through that, but I'm going to have people that have on my podcast. And if you prefer to work with somebody that's just dealing with how to get out of the chaos period, then I'm that person. But if you want to work with somebody that's been through those challenges, you're going to be able to connect with the people that are tapped into my podcast. I'm going to have some guests that don't have a business, so they're not going to have links to be able to connect with, but their story you'll be able to resonate with. You can jump in the comments below. They've been through what you've been through, so they can potentially respond to your comments and, have a conversation. I really want to see this podcast engaged in the comments. Jump in. Let me know where you're at. Let's have the conversation. The guests will be able to come jump into the conversations. So let's have a conversation. Explore, ask questions, be curious. Be open to possibility and other options other than how you see things, because the world opens up when possibility opens up. And that's what I want for you out of this podcast. That's what I want for you when it comes to your evolution, your evolving. And I'm here to support you in any way that I can. So if you don't want to work with me and you're looking for somebody, then reach out. Ask the question if you haven't seen them on any of the episodes. Get in the comments. Let me know who you want to see in these episodes, because if I haven't interviewed them yet, chances are I've got them in my network. We just haven't connected regarding the podcast at this stage. So if there's something that you want to see within the podcast, get in the comments. Let me know what you'd like to see and who you'd like to see when it comes to topics. And I'll do my best to draw people in those fields and in those areas so that we can have candid conversations. You can get connected with them. I want to see you grow. I want to see you evolve. I want to see you jump from phase 1, or at least phase 2, into phase 3 and phase 4. And, you'll be floating in and around these phases at any given time. God knows, none of us are perfect. We don't arrive. Life is a journey. We're born to death. That is one of the natural laws of the universe that I just talked about. It's evolution. We were born, we die. It's going to happen. There's no living forever in this physical body, in this universe. Some people believe our souls carry on forever and ever and we get reincarnated, but in this physical body, we're born, we die. And that is something that we can't deny. So being able to make the most of that time and that process is what this podcast is going to be about. I want to take that chaos, that craziness out so that you can start to function in phase 3 and 4 and unravel all of it, because that's where the inner peace lies. That's where the evolution is. That's where the peace, the calm, the tranquility, the natural energy, the passion, the drive, the force within you, that's where it lies, is in those 3rd and 4th phases of our consciousness. And like I say, we can get you there through a podcast. Great. If you need to connect with people to help get you there, I'm hoping to be able to provide that either through myself and or my guests. So I hope you jump in, you subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, and take care, everyone. And we'll see you in the upcoming episodes.